To Don't Bury the Lead. Tonight we are recapping the WWE pay per view Elimination Chamber. Pretty good show. Dom, I'm joined by Dom Scarcella. Dom, go ahead and tell the people about yourself.
I am freshly barbered this morning. And let me tell you something. I'm in the barber shop this morning, Saturday. And when I'm in that chair, me and my barber, we're talking WWE wrestling. We're talking Vince McMahon. We're talking sales. And we're talking don't bury the lead and the great shorts you're putting out there. And let me tell you something more. I wish I had more hair to cut so the conversation would have lasted longer because I wasn't finished. And now, after Elimination Chamber, I got even more to say. So, without further ado, John, don't bury the lead. What's our top story from the 2023 Elimination Chamber Premium Live event?
You know, that's a high energy intro for a high energy show we had tonight in Montreal. That was the crowd was hot, and I think it's beaming off into us now in the show because the crowd was boiling hot.
Yes.
But let's get to the lead. I don't want to bury it. Roman Reigns defeats Sami Zayn for the WWE Championship. Um, really solid match. Crowd was completely nuts for it. I
Yes.
think most people though realize that it's something's going to happen at WrestleMania, and Roman Reigns goes over in about 16, 17 minutes. Dom, what did you think of the match?
The match was it was good for a pay-per-view. It had a lot of the pay-per-view match stuff that we've seen before, like guys kicking out of finishers. Lots of high spots, lots of near falls. Um, it was psychologically what Roman was doing in the ring was great. Like this was not a match where the moves and the sequences and the high spots were necessarily as important as they usually are. Like this match had such great story behind it, such great build up, and Roman, you could see it all match right from before the bell when they just had the intros and they're standing in the ring to how long it took them to lock up after the bell rings to a lot of the jawing that Roman's doing all match with Sami, with people at ringside, with Sami's family, and then later again with Sami again. I mean, Roman was Roman was in this match to teach Sami a lesson and
Yeah.
to make sure that Sami knew he was getting taught. And there were enough times where it looked like the student might get one over on the teacher, but like you're saying, ultimately Roman goes over. We did have two ref bumps, um, chairs being used at the end after both refs were out, run-ins by both Jimmy Uso and Jay Uso, who surprisingly were in Canada. We'll get to that more later. Um, and
Yes.
then eventually it winds up, Roman spears Sami after multiple chair shots. And the original ref finally comes around to count three, and Roman wins, and then we get the big post match again, and it looked so much of this match post match looked like Royal Rumble main event post match, and it was supposed to like that. That was not an accident, and we eventually get Kevin Owens, and the show goes off the air. Sami Zayn having been defeated in the match, but he's the only guy left standing in the ring. So a lot to unpack, especially from a storyline standpoint. And it was supposed to be inevitable that Roman Reigns wins. Did the WWE do enough to make it not so inevitable, especially once this match got started?
Yeah.
Did we think the way this match went in the storytelling, that there was a chance.
I I was pretty captivated toward at certain spots, but ultimately I figured there was gonna have to something crazy was gonna have to happen for him to win.
Okay.
And I thought they'd at least give some sort of ending where they'd give the opportunity to have a triple threat in the main event for WrestleMania. But they pretty much just squashed any of that. I think it's like Roman Reigns went over. He didn't go over clean for the most part. There
That's
was a
right.
running.
It
There's all
didn't
this
go over
stuff.
clean.
Um, but I'd have to say, you know, really impressive showing from Sami Zayn
Mhm.
and Roman Reigns here. And something specifically that I have in my notes, if you don't mind if I jump into it here.
Go right ahead.
Um, you know, we just did a SmackDown that was so horrific. I had no notes, and this has a page note for this match, which is a good
Sure,
sign.
sure.
So it's good that they go slow when the crowd's hot. So, you know, one of the things that was notable is the crowd in WWE is never that nuts as it was tonight, and
They're
that's a
nuts.
big kudos to Montreal. Like
Hmm,
they were going crazy for everybody, everything they were just eating up. And you know, when the main event hit, they didn't do anything, and they were just chanting and going nuts for a few minutes as they did like a stare down back and forth.
mhm,
Uh, so they took that energy and they wrestled super duper slow because you don't need to do anything else. The crowd's already there. You don't have to do anything. So you don't have to turn it up. Let's just say, like, you sometimes you have to turn the intensity up in the main event when the
mhm.
crowd's dead and they're tired and it's WrestleMania and it's 12:30 and people are like, "Is this show over yet?" You know. But this was just perfect. It's 11 o'clock. They're still fired up, so they went really slow, and that's what you can do in a main event when the crowd's really energized and you've built the story in a way that they have. So they did a great job just working super slow. Is really what I'm alluding to, and it's just pretty textbook how to control the heat throughout the match.
Mhm,
You know, um, everything was the back and forth, and the crowd reacted to the back and forth. I think Sami Zayn had momentum, and Roman did one move, and you could then the crowd just died. I was like, dude, this is perfect. They're controlling
mhm,
the heat so well. They're not trying to jack it up too fast. They're not doing a zillion high spots in the beginning, and the crowd tires out or kind of gets bored with it, or it's going too long. So those are just some technicals. I would say when you're in a match and you have to sort of understand what the crowd's like and how to get the most out of them. They got the most out of the crowd. Um,
yes. You
and
mentioned the pace.
mhm,
Do you wanna go a little more on the pace? Because I think that was part of the psychology of the match. I mean,
mhm,
a big part of this storyline was that Roman wasn't taking Sammy seriously as a threat to his title.
no,
So, yeah, Roman's, you know, hits a move, doesn't follow up. He's more interested in taunting the crowd early in the match than he
yeah,
is locking up with Sammy. You know, he's following up on nothing. And maybe that's also a good way to not have Roman get spent because he just had a really physically taxing pay-per-view match with Kevin Owens 3 weeks ago at Royal Rumble. And it's always in the back of my mind, how much can Roman endure physically
mhm,
as just a human being who's fighting leukemia? Can he put on another 20 plus minute, fast paced, big hitting pay per view match 3 weeks from his last one? You know, with you know a few minor bumps on SmackDowns in between.
mhm,
And so I mean, the everything I think worked together. Maybe it was just serendipitously everything fell together. But between the crowd being hot, and so the performers didn't have to rush, with maybe Roman needing to pace himself, and also the psychology of the match being that Roman doesn't have to go all out early. Of course he's going to beat Sami Zayn. Of course, right? except I think the match was good enough where there were a couple of moments. And let me tell you where my mind went as I'm
Sure.
watching this entire pay-per-view. Natalia is Canadian. She loses. Brock Lesnar has Canadian citizenship. Technically, he loses. Edge is Canadian. He wins.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, so they didn't have all the Canadians win. Because if all the Canadians win, then Sami is getting squashed.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
fact that they had, like Natalia lose and she was out midway. I mean, she wasn't the first one eliminated from the elimination chamber, and we'll get to that in more detail later. But Natalia loses; she wasn't really a threat in that match late. Um, Brock wound up standing tall at the end, but he gets DQ'd because he's basically getting beat. The mixed tag match, yeah, Edge is on the winning side, and he's Canada loves him; he's Canadian. So at that point, I thought, okay, they haven't overdone the hometown heroes win. So that at least left the possibility open that, yeah, maybe there's a surprise and they put the belt on Sami.
Right.
Now, how
And
did Sami look in this match? Because part of it being believable that Sami has a chance is that he has to look good. We can't just say, well, the story up to this point is that Sami should have an underdog chance. He has to look it in the ring. How did Sami look to you when the bell rang and now he's face to face in a wrestling match with Roman Reigns?
I'll tell you what. Um, I think because he's been a comedy gimmick for so long,
Mm-hmm.
there were some doubts going into tonight.
Yes.
And even there was like a so-so promo he had on SmackDown. I was like, maybe it is Cody, all along. Like just give it to Cody and we'll call it a day at WrestleMania. But tonight he felt like a champ. I mean, he felt like a guy that if he won the belt, they're gonna go nuts. And he looked good in there and had the whole thing going for him and had that huge baby face thing going for him that WWE always struggles to find, and they have it with
Mm-hmm.
him. So I felt like tonight, he's a champ. He's a potential champ, and he should be. And they've elevated his game, and he can go. He's always been able to go in the ring, and
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about this before, but he's got a pretty extensive indie background. He's
Mm-hmm.
always been technically sound and good in the ring, and there's never been complaints about that. Oddly enough, it's always been his personality that's been kind of flat or bizarre, and he dances and has that goofy song and everything like that. That was his theme song tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So oddly enough, that's progressed so much that he's got the technical stuff. You know, he, that I would feel like, yeah, he could be a champ. So that's my feedback. What do you think?
Sami wrestles without the t-shirt on tonight, which I think was good. Um,
Yes.
he had been looking for months and months, anytime he was in a match or even at ringside, that this was a guy who was taking a nap on the couch backstage, and like somebody yelled at him, "Sami, you're up!" And he just rolls off the couch in his t-shirt and sweatpants and goes
Oh,
running out to the ring. The hair's disheveled, unlike mine, thanks to Scott's barbershop this morning.
look
Um,
at that.
yeah,
Our
right.
first sponsor.
And and so Sammy takes off the shirt tonight, and he's a lanky guy. He's tall enough where he doesn't look like Roman towers over him. And he had enough of a physique tonight where he did not look out of place in the ring next to Roman Reigns.
No, honestly, he didn't look too small or shrimpy.
No,
Roman was bigger than him, and he big manned him, and that made sense. But Roman is huge, so
but Sammy got some throws in. He does that exploder suplex, and he had no problem getting Roman up. He knocks Roman over the top rope a couple times. Had no trouble doing that. So it's not as if Sammy struggles to execute moves against a wrestler who's slightly larger than I don't know how if it's slightly. I mean, they build Roman at 265, which I think is down from what he weighed at his peak. But I mean,
Mhm.
Roman is still looks bigger, but Sammy doesn't look like he's out of place in a wrestling ring. He
Yeah.
looked like a guy who could wrestle. Um, and they did enough with him tonight where there were a couple of spots where the crowd was into it. And if the title had changed hands, would it have been just appallingly shocking to you if Sammy had won on some of these 3 counts?
No, no, no. I almost was like, you're kind of pulling for him a little bit. Uh, you were like, yeah, do it now. Pull the trigger because I've seen that trigger pulled many a times at a WrestleMania, and it's like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
When the title goes over because the match sucked and the storyline sucked the whole time. So if you have it, it's there. But somebody will beat Roman and it'll be good. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be huge shoes for Cody to fill in a main event at WrestleMania after that. You know,
7. 7. There are 7 weeks to WrestleMania. In those 7 weeks, did they have enough time to develop enough heat between Cody and Roman to match or exceed? And the question should be exceed because it's WrestleMania. Exceed the chemistry, the storyline, and the fact that the crowd was into the performance that we saw tonight at Elimination Chamber. Do they have enough time to do this? It's a
I
long
mean,
haul, isn't it? It's a high bar and it's a long haul, and they only have 7 weeks.
yes, it's not. It, I would say it's going to be tough, and that's what I just was thinking tonight. I was hoping to somehow slither Sami Zayn into the main event, but I mean, if they win the tag titles, he's just going to be another middle of the road champ again, which he's been in the past. He's been an intercontinental champ before, so
Roman
yeah,
Reigns won this match tonight because of Jimmy Uso's interference.
yeah,
Roman was down on the mat, 1, 2, 3, with no ref because of the ref bump. And then Jimmy Uso comes in with the super kicks. And that's really what turns things for Roman. And then Jimmy's distraction allows Roman to hit a big spear very late. Uh, there's there might be enough kayfabe to say that Sammy got screwed here.
yeah. I think so.
They left that door open for themselves, and isn't that good storytelling and booking?
The
Not
only
only to get here, but they left themselves an
Dom,
opening.
wait, is it good storytelling or is it lazy storytelling? And lazy, by lazy, I mean some wonky false finish, and you're like, well, he could have won, and then, I mean, that's a trope old as time. It's just super. They've used that a ton. Like, oh, he
Have
could
they
have
used it
won.
recently with Roman though?
Kevin Owens, they did the fake 3 count. Remember Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns.
Was it the Royal Rumble? Did they have a false one in there?
Yeah, they had the ref took a bump, and they were like
Ref took a
one,
bump. Okay,
2, 3, 4, 5, and they repeated that tonight too. So they didn't
okay.
want, for some reason, they didn't want Kevin Owens to look weak. Although, what difference does it make? He should be looking weaker. You should
Mhm.
make the champ look strong for God's sake.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but
So
Sammy,
okay, good memory there. I had forgotten whether or not they repeated too much of this stuff at Royal Rumble.
yeah,
Um,
I think some of
yeah,
the stuff was supposed to parallel though the matches. I guess that was
sure.
the idea.
Roman handing the chair to Jay and saying, while both refs are out, Jay, you finish off Sammy.
Mhm.
I'm your family, finish off Sammy. And Jay will not swing the chair at Roman, nor will he swing it at Sammy. And in fact, they do the accidental, after all the times that someone is ducked and Jay has clobbered Sammy.
Right.
They flipped that tonight.
Yeah.
As Roman is berating Jay almost out of the ring,
Mm,
Roman sidesteps a recovering Sami Zayn who winds up spearing Jay, and then he's checking on Jay, and that really turns it.
right.
You know,
Well, I'll tell you what. Really good match. And I feel like, from what I typically like in a wrestling match, this
mhm.
wouldn't be it because it's so much storyline. Like it wasn't like a Gunter match where it's
No,
all technically sound. It's action. It's just wrestling, and then like there's maybe one distraction, but this was so many distractions, so much slow storyline stuff, and then the interaction between Roman and Sammy. But it really worked, and I really loved it. So I really liked this match. So this is like a rare situation where I would be like, I like this style, even though it doesn't have a sense of realism because it is
mm,
kind of ridiculous with the ref bump, the people running in randomly, and then like the slow moving. Like, why doesn't Roman just pounce him and pin him at certain points?
sure.
But
So, isn't this a win for long-term storytelling then? Because a match that in isolation maybe wouldn't have been that entertaining and we would have been scratching our heads. Instead, it makes sense because of what has happened the last, what, 7, 8 months?
yeah, I mean,
Good
it is.
psychology. We could have seen more out of them. Just physicality in the ring. There's that word, physicality, sequences, maybe counters and things like that, rather than just be spot, spot, spot. Especially for the last half of it. But this was a triumph for the fact that they've told a good story for more than half a year, and that's what they were presenting in the ring. The final chapter of a really good story that
Yeah,
went from um, guys who didn't care about each other to guys who slowly cared about each other to suddenly guys who were at each other's throat.
yeah, and overall, really good main event. And I'll say just what I mean. We've been talking for a while here about this match, but I just have one
Mhm.
more thing. Uh, Montreal they should just stay there. They should set up shop and have WWE matches there, based off of whatever random middle of nowhere Connecticut city they were in 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and the crowd was like playing on their phones and not into it, and just like, what is this? Versus the Montreal crowd was something I haven't seen in WWE in a very long time, where the crowd was that crazy. So
That was crazy for a pay-per-view. This was more like a Raw or SmackDown size arena. It wasn't the Alamo Dome.
yeah,
So the crowd was close. Even the upper deck was close.
yeah,
You could hear. I imagine if you were there, you'd really feel the presence of being in a crowd like that. But yeah, on the other side of it, I mean, Montreal crowd was hot 2 days in a row, but they got two good shows in a row.
yeah.
SmackDown last night, and then this pay-per-view here. They got good product from the WWE, so they had reason to like what was going on,
So
and they did. This was not a lazy crowd. We can argue maybe lazy booking, and and now I'm thinking about it too, whether too much of this stuff was lazy booking at the end, but it was not a lazy crowd, and they got good action top of card to bottom of card 2 nights in a row.
yeah, it wasn't a lazy crowd, and there weren't lazy workers.
No,
All the wrestling was good. Um, so anything else from this main event?
it's a high bar.
Yeah.
WrestleMania has to top this.
Mhm.
Storytelling wise, WrestleMania has to top this. I think it's a pretty high bar.
Perfect. That's a short. Um, yeah, so that's perfect. All right, Dom. So, I started off with what I thought was the lead, and which has been the lead. And, you know, any other matches you wanted to talk about? What do you think the next match we could really dig into here?
We can talk about all of them. Do you want to stay with the WrestleMania angle?
Sure.
Since this is the road to WrestleMania?
Sure.
All right, so Rhea Ripley is supposed to be co-headlining WrestleMania in a match against Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship. She's in a team tonight where they lose 2-on-3 to two retired wrestlers.
You got it. Right.
Is this really the road to? I mean,
Was this
this
what
match
Rhea
ends with
Ripley?
Rhea Ripley out of the match on the floor because a retired wrestler planted her out there, and in 7 weeks she's supposed to main event WrestleMania.
Some old lady beat her up.
I mean, Beth Phoenix can still go, so can Edge, but
Yeah.
2-on-3, the retired wrestlers, who are the two, get the win over the three active wrestlers, one of whom's supposed to be headlining WrestleMania.
So this kind of made sense because I think Finn Balor in that faction, which I don't know, I'm starting to like that faction actually. This faction,
Judgment Day, yeah.
I actually don't. They're just seem like I think Cole said it on the call today. They're like the Frankenstein group because they are just people that they put together that all aren't alike, but then they just kind of gave them all the same clothing. Like they pieced
Sure.
together 4 random people that they had on the roster, and and they just all wear the same color. So okay, it kind of works.
Mhm.
So I just have to say, basically, I think Finn Balor is the jobber now for that group. So when they have
Okay.
these for these
Hmm.
for this match here, like Finn Balor is not going to do anything else for a while in WWE or even his career in WWE. So he's going to be
Hmm.
the fall man whenever they have these matches like this. So it made sense. Like, okay, Rhea's not going to get pinned, but
Yeah,
Finn
she
Balor
can't.
is going
Yeah.
to. Yeah, and then they probably want to have Edge in WrestleMania because he's going to be the old man attraction, you know. So
Okay. Oh, okay. Maybe this sets up an Edge appearance at WrestleMania. Okay.
do you know
If
how?
that's the call, then maybe this is good to do. I mean, storyline wise, apparently Edge had started Judgment Day, and then either he left them or they kind of moved away from him, and then they were supposed to. This has been an ongoing feud. It's Edge and the people who used to be his followers who are now against him. So they needed a blow off eventually, and they got it tonight in Montreal.
Mhm.
But yeah, if Edge and or Beth Phoenix has something to do with WrestleMania, then this is more palatable than two retired wrestlers just beat three wrestlers, one of whom is supposed to be headlining WrestleMania.
And man, what a weird transition from when we first saw Dominic. Uh,
He's a
we were
heat
like,
magnet.
we were like, man, he doesn't really get it. He's, he was in like these weird things, these weird segments, but they really made lemons into lemonade with whatever they were doing with Dom and how he went to jail. And
For one night.
the parody of him going to jail for one night and then coming out with the teardrop and acting like a hardened cholo, like it's money. And the crowd is really responding to it. Like they're really giving it to him, you know?
He
So
had the heat. The crowd was hot against Dominic Mysterio tonight. He wasn't even technically a competitor in the match.
I've never seen a manager get so much heat. It's like the old Jim Cornette days where he
Yeah.
was
Oh my
like
goodness.
that, you
My
know?
goodness.
Yeah.
And he's involved in the finish somewhat, or at least in a false finish where he's throwing brass knuckles after distracting the referee.
Right.
Um, so he did involve himself in the match, but there was at one point where he gets run off by Edge. He runs to the back, but then he
Mhm.
comes back like a minute later and
Yeah.
like taunting the crowd the whole time, like this chicken heel just running out of the ringside area, and now he's back to taunt the crowd. And yeah, he gets it as a personality. I still wonder what he can do in the ring besides just be a jobber. But
Yeah,
you are right. He gets it as a personality, and he's the guy the crowd loves to hate.
a complete 180 for him.
Mhm.
From where we saw him when we first started watching to now. I don't really know much about the other people because it's all on Raw, so it's tough for me to
Mostly
kind of
Raw.
delve into that. Um, and this was actually a pretty good mixed tag match, and a lot of
Yeah.
times these are not good because they're of the bizarre rules where
Mhm.
the I mean, basically only the men can hit the men and only the women can hit the women. But then the women can sometimes hit the men, and that's fine. But I never see the men hit the women because we don't need to see that anyway. But
Yeah.
um, I
And
wouldn't
these
want to
women
see
were
it.
were tough enough where yeah, maybe they could get a shot in on the men, and they did a few times.
Yeah. Oh, right. They power bombed both the guys, right?
Yeah, there was a spot in the corner where Finn Balor and Edge are fighting on the top rope trying to get the advantage, and both of the women sneak in. Beth Phoenix winds up power bombing Finn Balor. Rhea Ripley winds up power bombing Edge. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, good from that angle where they made a lot out of this match, and the crowd was into it, and
Hmm.
um, pretty good stuff as far as a mixed match.
Yep.
Uh, anything else from here you want to talk about this mixed tag match?
Uh, Rhea looked pretty good um, in there against Beth Phoenix. Um, Beth has enough, you know, she has enough cachet from her career where, and, you know, and she's not like over the hill old.
No.
So for her to stand in there with Rhea Ripley and for Rhea Ripley to look pretty good working with Beth, that's somewhat good news. But again, we're on the road to WrestleMania, and we need to see Rhea Ripley on SmackDown if she's going after the SmackDown champion, and and I need to see more Rhea Ripley one on one. I need to see her win formidably against someone who she should win formidably against, or win in a squeaker against someone else who is elite level and her class. I need to see that, and I need to see it quickly. There's 7 weeks to WrestleMania. I'm going to keep saying it. I need to see that.
Well, Ronda Rousey's on the SmackDown roster. If she really wants to prove herself, she can try to put a match together with her. We can see how really good she is. But
Maybe.
you've also got you've got Natalia, which probably will have to take care of her throughout. You know, go wrestle a good match with her on SmackDown,
Which
where she's
everybody
already.
does, it seems.
Yeah, right. Um,
Natalia is the Gunther of the women's division. She and Sonya Deville are the Gunthers of the women's division, just without belts. Like if
yeah,
you
I
need
saw.
somebody to like get their ring rust shaken off and to look pretty good in there with somebody, they throw them in there with Natalia, they throw them in there with Sonya Deville, and they go over and they wind up looking all right. So yeah, I
Admittedly,
mean,
I missed the women's elimination chamber, but I
okay.
really
Do you want to go? Do you want to stay with the Canadians, or do you want to go to the men's elimination chamber
we
next? What
might
do
as
you
well
want to
just
do?
stick with the Canadians. Let's just go
Okay,
down
Brock
the list.
or the women's EC. You said you'd missed part of the women's EC.
No, but I saw the Brock match, and it's Brock versus Bobby Lashley.
Yes,
Um, kind of a
Brock has
long.
dual citizenship. He's Canadian citizenship.
He's in Minnesota, so he's borderline Canadian, right?
It's
If you're
South Canada, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean
Canada is North Minnesota, isn't it?
yeah, I
Sorry,
mean
Canadian fans, I'm joking. It's an old joke. Come on.
sorry, sorry to our Canadian fans. We
Yeah.
love you. No,
Sorry to our fans and friends in East Alaska.
I'll have to check the demographics of who watches this to see if we're pushing anybody's buttons.
So we've already
Um,
mentioned Lashley got the win technically on a disqualification. This to me looked like an almost an old time Vince McMahon booking where it's
yeah,
just two larger than life guys slugging it out. But with
Uh,
the added twist that these guys are pretty good grapplers. Like Brock is legitimately a shoot fighter and has an amateur wrestling pedigree. Um, Bobby Lashley, I think, has some of that same mixed martial arts behind him. So they were doing more than just lumbering guys exchanging punches.
and they're not only guys that are, have the actual technical prowess of the actual combat
Mhm.
skills. Like Brock's a UFC champ. Bobby Lashley has some bit of a background in MMA, but they're both monsters. They're
Yeah,
huge.
big guys.
And I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, this was, if Vince was 100% in the picture, this would have been the main event of WrestleMania for the next 3 years. He would love it. Oh yeah, these two huge guys,
Uh-huh.
that are always hanging out with him in the gym because he's always in the gym too. So, big bodybuilders, but giant guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this was supposed to be a blow off of a long-standing feud, which we saw a glimpse of in the Royal Rumble main event, the Royal Rumble 30-man match, where they locked up and Lashley winds up eliminating Brock. Um, do you like how this match finishes here for a blow off and what was supposed to be a rubber match in their one-on-one battles? Because um, Lashley wins because while he's got Brock Lesnar in that full Nelson. He calls it the Hurt Locker. Um, Lesnar drops to a knee and it looks like he's going out. And then he brocks up and he gets back to a vertical base, but he just can't break the hold. So, that tricked knee. And there goes the foot into Bobby Lashley's nether regions. And the ref sees it and it's a DQ because Brock Lesnar went low.
Feels For me, it feels weird to do it in a pay per view because usually the pay per view they'll have something like that on Raw or SmackDown where they do the DQ, but
Mhm.
you don't see DQs a lot, or you don't want to see DQs on pay per views because you want to see the conclusion here. We want to see
Mhm.
this. We want to see one of the people win or lose, but then you have the DQ, and then they're like, "Well, he technically won," and then Bobby Lashley technically won, but then Brock wrecks everybody, and then I'm
Yes.
like, "All right, so it's a throwaway." Um, yeah, and then I don't know. I haven't seen anything with either of them or their rivalry, and I haven't seen anything from them. Even though Brock Lesnar is on our little screen for SmackDown, we
Yes,
have
he
never
is.
seen him at SmackDown.
No.
So, being SmackDown guys, I don't know anything about them, but I like the match. Just, it was okay. Two huge dudes, old school Vince stuff. Good to have in the middle of and Brock's a huge name.
Mhm.
Um, Good to have in the middle as a middle card match here, and would like to see an actual finish, but okay.
The night before on SmackDown, we got a Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy appearance,
Oh boy,
where Bray Wyatt says to whoever wins the Bobby Lashley Brock Lesnar match, Bray Wyatt is probably I am one of them. Now the question is, Bobby Lashley technically won this, but he was left lying at the end of this. And Brock Lesnar did not win, but he was the guy who was standing tall after the match and walked out. It looks like they may want Bray Wyatt to stay babyface and solidify himself as a babyface. So maybe he's going after Bobby Lashley now because Lashley seems to be set up more as a heel. So I don't know if they'd want to do Lesnar, Wyatt, babyface, or is Lesnar going to be the babyface that allows Wyatt to turn? Is Wyatt the babyface that allows Lesnar to turn? So at least they're putting the big guys, the physically big guys against each other. So I wonder where this goes because we got a tease that something about this match was going to go into a program with Bray Wyatt.
this would have been a cool match for WrestleMania on the mid card and had a real finish. I would have been
Okay,
like, yeah, if this was a mid card match on WrestleMania and actually had the finish, I'd much rather see that than Bray Wyatt versus one of these two. I don't want to see that, but I have made my Bray Wyatt opinion felt maybe a little too strongly, too salty on this program. So I'll just let it ride, and I'll just bite my tongue here and be a little bit more positive and say, okay, you know, I would rather see Bobby Lashley versus Bray Wyatt, but maybe or Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, but maybe Bray Wyatt will do something cool at WrestleMania.
Or maybe because this was a DQ, they've either like doing some open-ended booking or lazy booking, and this Lesnar Lashley feud is not over.
You
I
know, I
don't
was
know. It's something. I have questions.
uh, so I was talking to my wife was watching this match with me, and she said
Okay.
it looks like these two should be together like a tag team, like Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley.
Oh,
So
wow.
maybe they could do like Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar versus Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy. That might be cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, now we're really getting into some fantasy booking here.
Now
So
that's the fantasy booking. That's probably the best thing you could. I'd rather see those two, and they both play face, and then Wyatt and Uncle Howdy play. Probably, I mean, they gotta go somewhat heel, or at least like they're the mysterious people, you know.
they are the mysterious dark side people. It's
And Lesnar and Lashley are both so big and lovable, you know. I mean, even though Lashley is the heel, they're just like, yeah, I'd root for a big badass team. What are you crazy?
Lashley's been a baby face in the past.
Yeah.
Been a big baby face in WWE in
Was he
past runs with the company.
Was he a
So
champ in TNA too, Bobby Lashley?
he
When he
was a
had all the
champ in
belts?
TNA, yes. And I don't know, I can't remember if he was babyface the whole time or only part of the time. But I mean, Lashley's been successful at or near the top of the card or in championship conversations as both a babyface and as a heel. So has Brock Lesnar.
Mhm.
So these are not guys who are pigeonholed. So there are possibilities. It's good to have storylines, maybe closed chapters at pay-per-views, but you don't want to finish guys off. You want there to be possibilities for everybody moving forward, and I think there was in this match.
Well, we could stay
Old
on the
school big guy match that was different from everything else on the card, and so maybe that was a nice palate cleanser. You
Canadian.
look back over the pay-per-view, and it was good just to see two physically powerful, good athletes in the
Right.
ring slugging it out.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Next match here, and we're gonna stay on the Canadian route here.
Okay.
Um, the women's uh,
All we've
extreme.
got left are elimination chamber matches. Those are the two remaining. So we'll go women's first.
If we're gonna stay on the Canadian train, I think it's Natalia, right? We want to talk about that.
Natalia gets a big pop in the women's elimination chamber match.
And
It's
Dom, I missed this
Asuka.
match, so I missed this match. So go
Well, I'll
ahead
fill
and
you in
tell
on
me
what
what.
it was, and there's enough here for you to talk about. I think. Asuka, Carmella, Raquel Rodriguez, and Nikki Cross are the first four out and go into those pods in the elimination chamber. Natalia and Liv Morgan start the match. So Liv Morgan was starting the Royal Rumble 30 woman match, and she's now starting elimination chamber. So they have some confidence in her ability to be in there a long time.
It's a huge honor to open the Royal
Right?
Rumble and then go that long, and then even in this,
To
they're
open
opening her.
elimination chamber.
Yeah,
Her gimmick is getting a little vanilla. They've taken her away from the kind of crazy edgy wrestler, and they've tried to make her a little more mainstream lately. Like she's dressing in jean shorts. I mean, they're not quite John Cena's jorts, but they're like they're like they're denim. She's not.
they're
She. I mean, crazy people don't wear denim shorts. Maybe awkward people do, but not like truly insane people. So maybe they're trying to vanilla her a little, but she works well with Natalia. Um, and they do a neat thing. The elimination chamber matches were both good, but for different reasons. The first thing you notice about the women's match is that the women are small enough that their heads can go through the cage.
oh,
So both Natalia and Liv Morgan do spots where their heads get shoved through the elimination chamber cage because the openings, those square openings, are big enough, just big enough for an average sized female noggin to fit through. So they do that spot early. Um, the women's match moves a lot more quickly than the men's match does. Raquel enters first of the people who are in the pods. Lots of power moves. Then Nikki Cross enters, and Nikki Cross is also one of those wrestlers. Her character is supposed to be someone who's very unorthodox, and Nikki Cross uses the top of the elimination pods. She climbs up there and winds up cross bodying the other three wrestlers from the top of the pod. So that's a good spot. Then Carmella enters, and we get our first elimination with only 5 wrestlers in there. So Asuka is the last one to enter. She's not in the ring yet when they do another great spot using the pod. Raquel basically spears Nikki and drives her through a side of one of the emptied elimination pods. So it's like Raquel Rodriguez, the power wrestler on the women's side, just basically breaks the elimination pod with Nick, uses Nikki to break the elimination pod. So that's a good power spot for Raquel, who has had lots of good power moves up to this point. And then she gets the first pinfall of the night on Nikki Cross. Liv then does the second big spot off the top of a pod. While Raquel is fighting up the turnbuckle with, I think it was Natalya at that point. Raquel winds up dropping Natalya off, but then Raquel is just, in that dazed moment when she's just up on the second turnbuckle by herself, facing out of the ring. Liv Morgan comes off the pod nearest that corner, sunset flip power bombs Raquel off that second rope, off the pod. Great high flying aerial maneuver. And again, another great use of the pod. It was a big high spot. And then Carmella runs in to try and get a sneak pinfall, but Raquel kicks out at 2. Then finally, Asuka enters and things really start picking up. We get a double submission by Natalie and Asuka on Liv Morgan. Natalie gets the sharpshooter. We're going to call it a sharpshooter because she's a member of the Hart family. Yeah. So she can call it the sharpshooter. Natalie gets the sharpshooter on Liv. Liv will not give up. She tries to crawl the ropes. Natalie pulls her to the middle. She will not give up until Asuka comes over and gets that double arm lock stretch onto Liv. So now Liv's got 2 opponents submitting her, and Liv basically passes out and the ref calls it. So we get a double submission on Liv Morgan. Natalie's got the sharpshooter on Asuka. Carmella comes in and super kicks Natalya, and that's when Natalya gets pinned. So Natalya goes out. So she's not winning, and I'm going, oh, a Canadian didn't win. Maybe Sami Zayn has a chance, But Natalya performed well here. She gave the crowd something genuinely to get behind, and she performed well. But she's out, and now it's Carmella and Asuka double teaming Raquel Rodriguez, double super kicks, and eventually they double cover Raquel Rodriguez, which was a really cool spot because Raquel is a bigger wrestler, and sometimes I think it looks too easy for other wrestlers to beat her. So in a match like this, yeah, why not let Raquel Rodriguez leave looking strong? That it took both Carmella and Asuka double teaming and then double covering her, like each hooked a leg and they leaned back on it in order to pin Raquel. So Raquel looks strong, gets pinned, and now it's Carmella versus Asuka, which on paper is a really bad mismatch. Asuka wins, submitting Carmella eventually with her arm hold after some good pin reversals by each. So it's not like, Carmella was the one who maybe looked out of place in this match. She was more old school diva, like beauty contestant. Whereas the other ones all looked more like wrestlers. They looked more like wrestlers. But Carmella gives a decent showing here. Asuka winds up winning, so Asuka's going to WrestleMania to face Bianca Belair. Good match. good use of the Elimination Chamber, good use of the physical structure, the women doing things that the men were not doing, and holding their own in the match. I thought it was a good opener. I enjoyed the performances. Nobody looked weak. And Asuka, who I've been really impressed with, even though I've only seen her 3 times, she looks like the real deal. She's someone, to me, if we were giving out grades, she would get at least a solid B. I don't know if they let her do mic work and if she can really spur storylines, but everything else she does well. She has a great character. She's committed to it. She looks different. The
Yes.
face paint, the antics, the get up. She's fantastic in the ring, and not just as a high flyer, like great grappler, great at
She
sequences, does submissions, and can do the high spots off the ropes and off the turnbuckles if she needs to. She's the real deal. She was great in the Royal Rumble 30-woman match. She had one match where she went over Liv Morgan on SmackDown,
mhm.
with the other 4 members of this match watching eventually. And then tonight, she's the real deal. I wonder if they'll let her take the mic at some point. But even without that, she's an asset to whichever brand she winds up on, Raw or SmackDown. I'd like to see her more on SmackDown since we watch SmackDown.
So Asuka is, in my opinion, the best woman they have on their roster.
From what I've
Men
seen,
and
I will
women.
not disagree.
Yeah, and she was always a favorite of mine, and I hadn't seen her in a while, and then she was gone, and then came back, and I was like, oh, I forgot about her. So
Okay,
I'm glad you're giving her high scores because she is that good.
she
At
is.
one point, Dave Meltzer said she might be the best man or woman wrestler on that roster. He put her at that level. So, and this was a few years ago. She was really hot a few years
Okay,
ago. Um,
she's not that far off now. She can. There's nothing she can't do in a ring physically. I mean, she's not going to be the biggest power wrestler in there, but she can strike, she can grapple, she can do aerial maneuvers. She sells, she bumps, she does sequences, she works a quick pace. She has the psychology down. There's nothing she can't do in the ring.
yeah, you know what? Yeah, she's got all that technical stuff down, and but she can beat ass too. Like if
Yep.
she when push comes to shove, and like she has to either like some of her stuff just looks flat out stiff,
Yeah.
and it looks great. And that's Japanese stuff. Like
Yep.
when in doubt, they'll go strong style,
Strong
aka
style.
stiff the hell out of each other. So I like stiff wrestling, so I'm a
Mhm.
fan of it. All those Sheamus Gunter matches, they were plenty stiff, so, and we like those. Um, yeah. So I'm glad you like Asuka. And okay, one other thing that's a little on topic, but not necessarily. It could be about the men's or the women's.
Go for it.
What did you think about this wonky gimmick? This really wild gimmick here with
Okay.
the cage and the pods and the countdown, and then they get released from the pod. Like you had never seen an elimination chamber, right?
No.
What did you think of it?
Uh, I like it. It's they're all variations on staggered entry battle royals.
Hmm.
Royal Rumble is that way. Elimination Chamber is that way. War Games is almost that way, but there's 2 teams. But it's staggered entry things. There's the surprise. You've brought up that fans like counting. Well, in these staggered entry things, we find out that not only can fans count to 10 going from 1, they can count backwards from 10
They
as
love it.
well.
Mhm.
They may have had some practice on New Year's Eve, you know, but it's a counting thing. It's anticipation. Um, and the Elimination Chamber, like I brought up, the men wind up using it eventually too. But if you have a structure like this, there should be something about the structure that gets used. The women used the cage in more than one way that was interesting. The women used the pods
Mhm.
in more than one way that was interesting.
Mhm.
So if you're going to incorporate these decorations into the match,
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. In fact, I think it enhances the match if you do it right. And I think the women did it right tonight. And when we get to the men's match, I think the men did it right as well. So
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
like it. I think it's a good match.
Um, yeah, I like it too. It's you can't go wrong with a cage usually, and it allows them to do a lot more unique things. And maybe we'll talk more about that at the men's
Yep.
match. So maybe we could jump into that. The men's elimination chamber match. Um, that
For
was
the
an
U.S. Championship belt, a belt was on the line here. Austin
yeah,
Theory, and this has got to be tough on the champ because he's fighting five guys in this match. There's so many ways to lose. You've got like a 1 in 6 chance of retaining your belt instead of a 1-on-2 in a regular match. But Austin Theory winds up winning to retain the U.S. Championship. He pins Seth Rollins with the A-Town down after interference from Logan Paul.
yeah. Weird. You know what I thought was weird is not weird, but unique that the heel champion is defending his title in elimination chamber, giving five other people opportunities. Usually, heels would somehow, weasel their way out of this, right?
Right?
They wouldn't be like, oh yeah, they'd find some reason to not have to do that. But anyway,
Bianca Belair didn't have to defend the Raw Women's title in the Women's Elimination Chamber. It was to see who earns the right to face her. But Austin Theory, he's got to be one of the 6 in there.
yeah. So, anyways, yeah, Logan Paul gets in and really interesting way, and I think it was really well done how they opened the
Yes.
cage. Um, boy, there was an injury, and it looked bad, and it looked real because they stopped the match. Did you get that indication that it looked real?
I'm going to give you my notes for this one because the last 3 alive are Montez Ford,
Yeah,
Austin Theory, and Seth Rollins. Um, Austin Theory pins Montez after a Rollins stomp after Theory got the knees up to block a Montez Ford splash. So Montez goes for the splash, lands on Austin Theory's knees, bounces with his head and shoulders just dangling over the bottom rope towards the outside. And here's where yet another aspect of the Elimination Chamber comes into play that I like. Because of how this Elimination Chamber is constructed, when you spill out of the ring, you don't drop to the floor. It's the outside is the same level. It's just an extended platform. That's great.
yeah,
That's cool. And
yeah,
so Rollins delivers the stomp on the outside to Montez Ford, who gets then bounced back into the ring. Austin Theory pins him. And then I write Montez needs assistance to leave ring. Crowd cheers for him. Rollins and Theory have to lay low for a while. Dot, dot, dot. Shoot or work? Question mark.
yeah,
So in the moment, I'm thinking this is either a shoot and he really needs assistance, or they're doing a good job of playing that angle.
yes.
And then
It
Logan
was
Paul crashes the party as they have to leave the Elimination Chamber gate open for an extended period of time to get Montez out of the ring slowly. And then
so
I'm like, oh, okay, it was a work, but well done. You had me asking the question.
it was right. No, it was a work, but it seemed like he was legit injured because the two combatants stopped
Yes.
and they were like, um, they had stopped and they were trying to help him out, and that's not typically something they would do. And he was really playing off that he wasn't there, and hey, maybe he got knocked out. And
Yep.
we've seen stuff in the NFL this year with Damar Hamlin, and some horrible things happen in these
We see it in
crashes.
wrestling. Things happen.
Big E broke his neck, you know.
Yeah.
So that's an example of where something seriously happened, and instead it was a work.
Yeah.
So
Austin Theory stays in the middle of the ring. Seth Rollins kind of squirms his way over to a corner, and they both kind of make eye contact. You could see
right.
Seth mouthing something on the camera.
Mhm.
And so they were playing it as, hey, we're giving this guy time. There's extra officials in the ring. So they would have been prevented from locking up anyway. But
So
like everybody played it pretty well.
So Logan Paul ran in.
Mhm.
He attacked Seth. He really missed an opportunity to really heal it up by taking a shot at Montez Ford because he's there. He's very injured. People think he might be really injured. Why don't you give him a boot or two, while he's down and injured?
He's out of the ring by the time Logan Paul gets in because they give us the camera of the two of being helped
Well,
by three or four officials now.
that's why the cage could even be opened,
Yeah.
right? So the only reason that they would be able to open the cage is because this dude's injured, right?
Well, they open the cage every time a wrestler gets eliminated, but the
Ah,
fact they open it that wide and for that long is because Montez needs assistance. There's going to be 4 guys or 5 guys coming through the cage. They need to make sure he's safely out of the ring. He can't just hop out of the ring. So it's extra slow. And then as your attention gets turned back to Austin Theory and Seth Rollins in the ring, they're slow closing the cage door, and Logan Paul is suddenly in the ring. And then as Austin Theory wins, Logan Paul has climbed the outside of the cage and it's just like, Spider-Man leering at Seth Rollins as
that
Austin
was a good
Theory
idea.
beats him. Yeah, that was a
That
good
was a good
idea.
move by him. I don't know what to think of him sometimes, but I didn't see his match with Roman Reigns, and I've just seen some of his interactions in the ring and stuff like that. Um, but it might be because I'm just like he's a social media guy, or
Mhm.
he's like a YouTube. So I mean, we're YouTube people as well, but there's just something about the fact that he's getting pushed so quickly, and he's wrestled like 2-3 matches. And now he's going to be against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, which is like crazy.
Vince
Um,
McMahon loves celebrities,
no,
especially at WrestleMania,
I know, I know,
especially at the big pay-per-views.
and
Logan Paul's a good athlete. He understands the psychology and the personality of pro wrestling. He's formidable enough where he's believable if he gets in the ring and has to go. Like you're saying, I don't know if he would commit to a full-time WWE schedule, but as a pay-per-view attraction, he seems to work. He fits the WWE mold, and at least he seems to be physically in his prime. I'd rather see a Logan Paul who's at least serious as an athlete in his prime and is willing to do a great pay-per-view match than maybe having to bring back an older wrestler who's way past his prime.
yeah, true, true. Um, yeah, another thing, Montez Ford had himself a night, and I felt
Yeah.
myself kind of rooting for him, even though it seemed a little ridiculous because he's already part of a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of pulling for him there. I don't know much about the guys in there because it's all Raw guys, but
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, look at this dude. I know he's part of this tag team, but he's doing his thing. He did the thing and it's our thumbnail tonight,
Okay.
is when he climbed the top of the ring, or the top of
Yes.
the cage, and dropped down, and it was like, whoa. So he did that, was really cool.
It was a
And
Spider-Man drop. He climbs up the side of the cage to escape Damian Priest.
mhm.
And then he just keeps climbing. And then he gets to the part of the cage where it angles. He starts climbing on the angled part, and then he inverts himself. It's a Spider-Man pose. He's upside down with his feet on the cage and his arms holding himself in place between his legs. And then he drops onto all 5 wrestlers who are underneath him, kind of slugging it out on the outside of the ring there.
Yeah.
Great spot. Um, Montez Ford gets 2 of the pins tonight. And Montez Ford gets 2 pins. He pins Bronson Reed, who's the first man out here. This was a slower moving match, both with some of the movement in the ring and also with finally getting people eliminated. I mean, all 6 competitors are in this match for a while before they finally get Bronson Reed out of here. Bronson Reed looks strong, even though he's the first man out. Seems to be a young guy, but a very big guy.
Mhm.
Power wrestler, but can move. And I know I make Bam Bam Bigelow comparisons to any big guy who can move because it fits. He can move. He's a power guy. He finally gets pinned. after three guys team up to super kick him simultaneously. And then Gargano DDTs him, Rollins stomps him, and then Montez Ford hits the top turnbuckle splash, and they finally pin somebody. It's Bronson Reed. He's out. Damian Priest winds up pinning Johnny Gargano with a razor's edge. Johnny Gargano was obviously the smallest wrestler in here, but he looked pretty good. And again, like the women's match, nobody in this match looked like they didn't belong here. Mm-hmm. Then Montez pins Damian after a double team move with Rollins, which was unusual. Apparently, Montez is part of a tag team that I've never seen before in a tag team match, but apparently he and Rollins did something that was kind of what a polished tag team would do. It worked. Now Damian Priest is out. Damian Priest, a member of Judgment Day, who he looked good in this match. He was not involved in the mixed tag earlier. So he was the member of Judgment Day who was not part of that gang up. He looked good in this match, but does get pinned. And then, the finish we were talking about with the last three, Austin Theory winds up pinning his other two competitors who remain. And he needs help for both of them. This champion here, heel champion, lazy booking for your heel champion to always need help to retain the belt. I mean, eventually your heel's got to win clean, right? Or it just makes the belt look dopey and it makes the reign look like a farce. He's gotten help every time I've seen him in a big. Granted, I don't watch Raw, but every time I've seen him, pay-per-view, something else, a big highlight clip that they've told us about on SmackDown, he's getting help to either win this belt or retain it.
I feel like it's okay to do from time to time, especially if it's supposed to be the chicken shit heel.
He's the heel.
Mm-hmm. The chicken shit heel. That's the style. And that's what Austin Theory does. But Roman, who's had the title for 2.5 years, he's not chicken shit. He's the real deal. So when he wrestles somebody like Kevin Owens, he should go over Owens. But when he wrestles somebody like Sami Zayn tonight, I get you want to have Sami in play. So I don't want to say it's lazy booking with tonight, because I just thought it was maybe they shouldn't have done it so much with Kevin Owens. But anyways,
if you want to circle back to Roman Reigns, I've seen 3 Roman Reigns title defenses on pay-per-view. He's had help from the bloodline in each one of them.
What about the
Logan Paul at Crown Jewel? He had some help from the bloodline.
Really?
Yes.
Which is insane, because there'd be no reason Logan Paul should beat Roman Reigns. The fact that he's competitive with him is a win.
Yes.
Whereas, and same with Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn, on the other hand, I think you want to position him to be a champ. So this makes a little bit more sense. Kevin Owens shouldn't be positioned to be a champ, so he could just lose.
He's been a champ before, though, so I think maybe he carries some of that pedigree with him, and that's why he's formidable.
Yeah. But he ain't the guy that's going to take the title from Roman Reigns. And, yeah, so anything else from this match? Any other feedback here?
From this match, no other than it's the U.S. title seems to get defended on pay-per-views. The Intercontinental title seems not to get defended on pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Which is fun for SmackDown viewers like us, because we get to see Gunther put the belt on the line on, weekly television. It makes SmackDown great. He's got another one coming up, I believe. He just had one with Madcap Moss. And he'll have others in the future. We've seen plenty of Gunther on SmackDown, but no Gunther on a pay-per-view. When we saw him in the Royal Rumble 30-man match, and he was important in that match to give Cody Rhodes somebody to go one-on-one with for a long time, because Cody needs to show he can go one-on-one. Apparently he had a one-on-one confrontation with Baron Corbin this past Raw.
Oh, God.
Kind of an impromptu match. So Baron Corbin is at this point a very peculiar wrestler. He's the answer to a very important trivia question, but he's now becoming a jobber. Nobody likes him. JBL dropped him as a manager. I don't want to manage you anymore. He's getting beat by Cody Rhodes in a suit. He is also the last WWE wrestler to pin Roman Reigns.
Think about that. He pinned Roman Reigns at some point. This is dope.
December of 2019 at the Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view. Now, he needed help, but technically Baron Corbin, last wrestler to pin Roman Reigns.
Baron Corbin and Roman Reigns during that feud is when I stopped watching WWE because I went to a SmackDown and Roman Reigns was the face, Baron Corbin was the heel, and Baron Corbin was on the mic, and he shot a promo, and he's like, "Oh, come on down, Roman Reigns," and then somebody came down dressed like a dog, and like they played his music, but then it's Roman Reigns, he's dressed like a dog, and they changed the his theme song to be dogs barking, like to his music. It was so bad. And then eventually Baron Corbin toward the end of the night poured dog food on Roman Reigns. So I was just like, and we were there at the show and there were so many commercials and there was so much, and there's like no wrestling. And this is like what we saw. And I went to the bathroom and there was like, I was just chatting with people and we're like, this show is horrible. Like, yeah, this is bad. And everybody around me, little kids playing on their phone, adults just sitting there like horrified, no noise at all. And I was like, dude, I'm done with SmackDown. Like, this is it. So they've really improved it. And I'm glad they're jobbing out Baron Corbin because he made me stop liking WWE. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Things come full circle every now and then.
Full circle. I would love to see him just always lose and be a bum. Anyways, I did, as we're kind of doing the Italian goodbye right now.
Sure.
There's still some things we wanted to talk about. You mentioned that you didn't think the Usos would be in Canada for a certain reason. Do you want to delve into that?
There were news reports going around that there was a question as to whether or not Jay and Jimmy Uso would be allowed into Canada because of drunk driving convictions. They were told by Paul Heyman to stay home and watch SmackDown from Montreal on TV rather than go to Montreal. And they were not there last night. So no sign of them. So when Jimmy comes out during tonight's match, surprise, Jimmy is there. He's involved in the match. And then Jay comes out and they were there. They were part of it. That's cool. So this really was a bloodline thing. No Solo Sikoa. But we even got Paul Heyman getting into the ring a little bit there at the end. But yeah, interesting to have the Usos there, but not Solo. So it was not a one-on-one Roman Reigns title defense. Which you can say, do you want that or not? But yeah, I was genuinely surprised. But I don't read dirt sheets and stuff, and I don't read like prediction and fantasy booking. But something like that, it's just like a more of a business thing. Like we keep up on headlines involving WWE ownership and the sale of the company. Bloomberg had a headline out this week that WWE is looking for $9 billion from a potential buyer.
Oh,
their market cap is they've been announcing it for a while. As their market capitalization is 6. It's actually closer to 7. So when we were talking about this weeks ago on our own Don't Bury the Lead there, we said if the market cap is 6, somebody's got to come in with maybe 7, closer to 8. If it turns out the market cap is closer to 7, yeah, somebody better come in with 9.
Wow.
Simply because market cap, and maybe people don't understand the verbiage there. It's cap is short for capitalization. It's not cap like a cap that goes on a jar or a cap that you wear on your head. It doesn't mean a top limit. Market capitalization is just an abstraction. For publicly traded companies, you take the share price, latest share price, what was the latest trade that went down? You multiply it by the number of outstanding shares, and you get what is generally the public value of the company, the market capitalization. It's simple math, but it gives you an indication of if somebody wanted to just buy the company and take it private, that if the open market values the company at close to 7 billion, then if you want to basically wow the
It's got to be
investors.
above.
Yeah, and we just saw this with Twitter and Elon Musk. People going,
Yeah,
"Oh, Elon overpaid for Twitter." It's like, well,
he had
yes
to.
and no. Yes, he overpaid if he's just a guy buying 1,000 shares of stock. But if he's
Uh,
trying to buy the company outright, he has to come in way above market capitalization because company executives have what they call a fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary is a big word, just meaning there's trust involved.
mhm.
They have a trust-based contract with the shareholders to maximize shareholder value. If somebody says, I want to buy the WWE and I've got 6 billion cash. Okay, well, at 6 billion, each shareholder is getting less than $90 a share. On the open market right now, WWE is trading for about $90 a share. So
Mhm.
if WWE executives pull the trigger on that deal, they open themselves up to a huge class action lawsuit. Nobody wants that. So when a buyer comes in, they don't want this going to court. If they really want the company, they don't want to give anybody a reason to say the executives screwed me as a public shareholder.
Yeah.
So they come in with a number that's well above the current market capitalization.
Now, if
So
he's
if
trying to,
somebody wants WWE that's market cap is maybe 6.7, closer to 7 than to 6, then they better come in above 8 to be safe, 9.
yeah,
Because you don't want somebody going to court and saying, I reasonably expected to get higher than that for my shares. You know, if they came in, right at the market capitalization number, you could have a lawsuit and say, look, I bought in at this number because I think the company's growing. They've got TV deals coming up. I think they're going to be better than this. I think the company's worth more than what I paid for it, obviously. And you'd have a case. The SEC would get all over you if it went to court. The judge would have to hear you. So you've got to come in as a buyer well above what the publicly traded market is valuing the company of. If you want to just take over everyone's shares, you've got to come in with a number that is a reasonable gain for every shareholder.
the interesting thing too is I saw that Vince wouldn't necessarily have to be involved once they sold it. So like they could sell it and then it just won't be his. Um, so I guess what I'm alluding to is he could really be out of the picture if he sold it. You know?
Vince is both a big, probably the largest shareholder. He's by far the majority voting shareholder, the way they've structured the voting shares. And he's also an employee of the company. So, yes, we're talking about three different things, really two different things, shareholder and employee. So, yes, somebody could buy the company, buy his shares, but keep him as an employee, or they could buy his shares and say, yeah, we don't need you anymore.
Yeah. I mean, they probably wouldn't want if they wanted to buy the company for real. They probably would be like, "Well, we don't have this huge shareholder who has pull now." You know,
Mm-hmm.
they probably would buy him out, basically.
They would buy Vince out as part of it. And I saw rumors beforehand that people were saying, well, maybe the WWE doesn't have to find a buyer with that much money if Vince decides not to sell his shares. So you're
Why
going
would
to
they
buy
buy
out everybody except the McMahon family?
it?
So what do you own now?
Right? Yeah. I
You
mean, they
own
probably.
Vince McMahon's ego.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
and
and
if
not
you,
even his ego. You own the fallout of Vince McMahon's ego at this point. It's like, no, if you're buying out the WWE, you've got to pay for all the shares, including the McMahon shares. If you want to strike a deal with McMahon or Paul Levesque or Stephanie or Linda or Shane coming back, whoever, someone from the family, because it's been a family business before it was a publicly traded company. If you want someone like that sticking around, that's a separate conversation, I think, from the way it looks. From, do you want to buy out the publicly traded company, take it private, and be the owner?
Yeah.
Two questions,
I
two
wonder.
different questions.
Now have you read anything about who the potential buyers could be?
Maybe the same parent company of, is it UFC? I heard that Peacock would make sense. There were Saudi rumors of there would be a Saudi buyer, but that makes less sense for the product. Like if
Oh,
Vince
yeah.
wants to kill the product in its current form, yeah, he could do that.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're interested in keeping the product viable, but just with different owners,
Mhm.
then Peacock is rumored just because Peacock already has the arrangement with them. Yeah, I watched tonight's premium live events. They don't call them pay-per-views anymore because if you're a Peacock premium subscriber, you get WWE content. So I didn't have to pay extra specifically for this event tonight. It's part of my deal with Peacock Premium. So Peacock already has a huge arrangement for WWE's content, both live first run content and for a lot of their archival content. Um, and then, of course, the parent company of USC understands how to televise combat sports, even though, we're not breaking kayfabe here. Uh,
Mhm.
we're not going to be the ones to spoil here. Yes, WWE, it's more scripted. The matches are choreographed and contrived. It doesn't mean everything that happens is not physical. It doesn't mean that there are some surprises that can happen, because it is physical and it happens in any physical endeavor. But UFC parent company understands the presentation of this kind of television product, so maybe they'd be a viable buyer as someone who has the worth to do it and would know what to do with the product
This
once you own
would
it.
be is ESPN, is that who owns UFC?
I don't know if it's ESPN. I don't know the name of the company, but ESPN has the licensing with their premium events. I think it's much like the Peacock to WWE arrangement now, where if you want a UFC pay per view, I think you need ESPN Plus. I mean, don't hold me to that. I've seen a couple of UFC pay per view cards, and they were both through a friend who had ESPN Plus. I don't know if there's an alternative way to purchase it, but that is one strong business to business relationship that exists.
Sorry, I was
So,
wrong. I spoke out of turn. It's called Endeavor Group Holding. They own
okay,
they own the UFC. So they're the people that would also be interested in WWE, which
maybe if that rumor's true.
which kind of makes sense because it's something they're already kind of doing. They have,
Mhm.
I mean, they've kind of stolen some stuff from WWE, UFC. If I'm going to be honest with you, they
Mhm.
have these stare offs and they have the trash talk that's,
Mhm.
I don't believe is necessarily all real. And I feel like Dana's like, oh yeah, stir it up, stir the pot. And they have big entrances with theme songs,
Mhm.
just like
Okay.
pro wrestling. So they Dana White has come out and said he's taken some stuff from WWE straight up
Okay.
to make it more entertaining. So
the in the presentation of the television product, WWE and especially Vince McMahon have been pioneers.
mhm,
Vince did a lot of, maybe not so much with the in-ring product that we like, but as far as, he's been an innovator. Going national with the promotion, premium pay-per-view events. It's huge. I mean, WWE really took a leap forward with pay per view and made pay per view a leap forward format. Um,
mhm.
Licensing, cartoons, toys, getting people's names into movies. So Hollywood connections, celebrity connections, um, starting his own streaming network, realizing that archival content has value.
Hmm.
Um, Live weekly network TV shows or major cable shows. I mean, there's a lot of innovation that Vince McMahon is responsible for as far as presenting the product and and diversifying what it is you can sell to people and what potential buyers are interested in as customers. And so there's a lot for anybody who's involved in television to learn from Vince McMahon in that regard.
Hmm.
Yeah, for whatever we think of some of his cringier in-ring storylines and things that he wanted to do, and perhaps some of the scandals he's been involved in, there's no denying that the guy's a risk taker from a business standpoint, and his successes have been huge successes that have influenced not only the rest of major pro wrestling, but people outside of pro wrestling who just want to know how to put on who just want to know how to televise live events,
For sure. No, totally
how to
agree.
license them,
He's not just
streaming services, everything we talked about.
he's not just some guy that makes really weird bookings that pays his employees to have sex with him. He doesn't.
No.
He does more than that.
And there are plenty of other people who do that. There are
Right.
plenty other, like skeevy business people out there who,
They
they
hire.
inherit it from their parents or somebody, and they just kind of run the thing, and the power goes to their head. They take advantage of people, and they make some questionable decisions with the product from time to time. But Vince has had some of the business pitfalls, but he's been such an innovative business person. And things like Elimination Chamber. You asked me earlier, you've never seen an Elimination Chamber match before. What do you think of this? This is an example of doing something with pro wrestling that's different from just putting two guys into a boxing ring and saying, pretend you're wrestling,
Yeah.
pretend you're grappling for real. Put on a show. Give me a show in a boxing ring. This is way different from put on a show in a boxing ring. This is
Hmm.
this is beyond that, and it's interesting because of the beyond. Because over the years they figured out some things that positively complement the squared circle.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's all about other things that aren't wrestling per se,
Mhm.
and different things that they could do with it.
And they've been doing it long enough at this point where they have the greatest hits.
Yeah.
They know Royal Rumble works. They know Elimination Chamber works.
Money in the Bank. Have you ever seen
Money
that
in the
one?
Bank works.
That's a
Maybe
good one.
Extreme Rules doesn't work as much. Maybe we won't be seeing that anymore. WrestleMania, of course, works. Celebrities at your big pay-per-views works. Gimmick matches where you actually use the gimmick works. Maybe War Games works now that they've tried it on
Yeah,
NXT and now they've brought it into the major. Like it worked in NXT, now it works. It gets called up to the majors.
it sure as hell
Like
worked this year. I like the War
it
Games.
worked this year. So at this point, they have enough of a history where they've got their greatest hits album. They know the things that really work, and if they can just keep putting good action in the ring and tell good stories, they have enough formats and frameworks to present this to people in an interesting way.
All right, Dom. Well, as you can tell, I'm yawning. Do you have any final thoughts here?
It is 12:45 in New Jersey. This was another long pay-per-view, twice as long as a SmackDown, and a long don't bury the lead. We did not bury the lead. We did not bury anything on this show. I think we gave it a good effort. I think
Yeah,
we gave it a good effort. We tackled stuff in order. We hit the points we needed to, and we're looking forward because we want to do this again in a week for SmackDown, and we want to stay on the road to WrestleMania.
we will, as this is Don't Bury the Lead.
The
We'll
bar has
only
been set for WrestleMania with extreme with the elimination chamber time. If you want to take away from tonight, it's that they set a high bar for what WrestleMania has to deliver with the main event in the main storyline.
Mhm. My takeaway, I'd say, maybe before I leave, my takeaway here, because we're doing a Italian goodbye, um, my takeaway would be that I wonder if they can somehow weasel Sammy into the main event or find a way to put him into the main event. If not, I would say if they put him as a tag team with Kevin Owens, and they do that, the crowd for me that's not enough. I want to see him wrestle Roman Reigns again and get his comeuppance. You know.
Sammy looked viable tonight.
Hmm. When the baby face is that over, you gotta find a way to make him win. He doesn't just lose and go away, and that's it. And they built a storyline for too long that I just feel like it's built up and it's not over. It
And
can't end.
it was speaking of over, the Montreal hot crowd was hot, but you're right. Sami Zayn has been a hot baby face even when he's not in his hometown.
No, yeah,
Tonight it
exactly.
was just extra and it was great to see.
It's amazing.
But Sammy is not a product simply of the hometown crowd tonight.
No.
So will he be part of WrestleMania? And the question before that is, will he be needed?
Oh.
I think that's combining both of our takeaways. The bar has been set high. Will they get so that means will they need Sami Zayn for WrestleMania?
Oh. Dun, 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 dun. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Don't Bury the Lead. We do recaps of SmackDown every Friday night. Tonight's special because it's a pay per view, so we kicked it over to the pay per view and we did a recap here. But come out and see us every Friday night. We recap SmackDown right after the bell. We've been having a lot of fun, been doing it for about 6 months now. You can check out all of our shorts, all of our past videos as well. The shorts are doing great. Yeah, so
Like,
if,
subscribe, comment, and really leave us your thoughts, even if you don't like us. We're
yeah,
readers, we're literate.
if you don't like us, leave us a comment. That's okay. If it's too nasty, I have the power. I can delete it. So whatever, I'll just delete it. But
Tell
no,
us why you don't like us. Like, help us improve if you think we need to improve.
yeah,
But you know,
our,
the occasional pat on the back, we'll take that too.
yeah, we want the pats on the back. I encourage those. And if you leave some nasty thing in the comment section, I'll delete it. So yeah, there's that. All right. Well, this has been fun, Dom. Thanks so much for joining. A
Yes, sir.
pleasure as always. Thank you so much, man. And thank you all for joining. Have a nice rest of your evening.